All right, we're going to kick it off. ReelBlend welcomes this week the great Tim Miller. Tim, thank you so much for being here this week, man. This is fantastic.
It is my pleasure and my honor.
This is something I never thought I'd ever say, but this is a Terminator movie that wouldn't exist in our lifetime unless Linda Hamilton said, yes, I'm going to do it. I will come back. Was there a version of this movie in your mind if she said no? And how do you put that kind of pressure on someone to say, this movie doesn't exist without you?
Well, I was there before before even Jim was back. David Ellison and I started talking about doing this movie. He saw a pre-finished version of Deadpool because we were talking about another project, and then bonded over a nerd love of this one. And he said, I'd like to get another shot at it. And would you be interested in help formulating what that was? And I said, well, one of the key things that would make me want to do it is if Jim came back, because that, as a fan, would say, okay, you guys aren't, can I cuss?
Yes, absolutely.
That as a fan would be some indicator that you weren't going to fuck it up again, right? And so, but there was no story there. And then when Jim came back, immediately the conversation turned to Linda, because to me it was always about Linda Hamilton and continuing that story. If Linda didn't come back, honestly, I don't know. I might have bailed at that point. But for her, I think it was just a question of whether there was something interesting that she could bring. And I think the fact that you guys have seen the movie, so I think the fact that that much time has passed allowed her story to be what it was, which I think is really interesting, and allowed T-800's story to be what it was. This required a certain passage of time to make both of those characters interesting again, I think.
T2 changed my life. I was 8 years old. I remember seeing it on the couch in between my mom and dad. The visual effects in that film, I look better than a lot of movies still coming out today, which is unbelievable. And I'm curious, because you had so many visual effects to use, because technology has changed a lot since T2, where was that push-pull there of how much you wanted to get in camera versus digitally? Because I feel like you had a perfect balance, just like James did on the second one.
Well, first of all, thank you. You're very kind. I don't know about perfect balance. It really comes down to I think practical effects are always great if you can do it. If it does work, it's better and cheaper to get it in camera. It's great for the actors because they can interact with something, and not people acting on a green screen is tricky. So that's good. I think it's particularly important to have those practical, like the truck flip, for instance.
Yes.
It became a thing where, do we have to flip a real fucking truck, Tim? Yes, we have to flip a real fucking Yes, we have to flip a real fucking truck. And there were times in post where I said, did we have to flip a real fucking truck? But I'm glad we did, because I felt like that grounded sort of the sequence in a way that it would be different if it didn't. Where it's an option like that, where it's not an option like the C5 plane sequence, where obviously we can't crash two planes together, then you have to rely on visual effects. But I'm comfortable with that, and so
True background.
Yeah, and we previs the fuck out of it, so you can kind of go through with the production team and go, okay, we can do this practically, let's do it. Okay, we can't do this practically, let's do it. Can we put Linda and Arnold on a wire? No, we can't throw them around.
Not with that attitude.
Yeah, no, we can't. So you kind of go, okay, well then what are we going to do? Is it going to be, you kind of run through your list of options. Is it going to be a stunt double with a face replacement, or is it going to be an all CG shot? And you just kind of work your way through in a very logical way. But my approach to visual effects is let the cheapest, most effective way win. If I can do it practically and that's cheapest, great. If the cheapest way is to do it with CG, great. I'm not afraid of them blending together or feeling like they coexist, which is not to say that I think we nailed it in every single shot, because I don't. But I thought we did a pretty good job.
Damn good.
Thank you.
You do something really interesting with this movie is you walk this really fine line of fan service where there are some really great throwbacks that I really enjoyed, and there were moments where I was like, is he going to do that? Is he going to do the throwback? And you didn't, which I love. You avoided some of what I thought were going to be very obvious throwbacks. What is the balance of kind of tipping the cap and sort of like giving fans that acknowledgement of the past films, but then also going, no, this has to be its own film on its own? Because there are a lot of moments I thought you were going to do this very obvious throwback and you didn't, and I applaud you for that.
Well, I think being a fan is the key to that whole experience. So I can I feel like because I love it, and I can sit there and imagine I'm somebody on the internet or in a movie theater watching this movie and decide, okay, what's fan service and what is honoring the franchise. And some of the stuff I feel like, that I would, I'm done with Hasta La Vista, baby. Honestly, I was kind of done with I'll Be Back.
I was gonna. That's what I wanted to ask. Like in regards to his question, was that something you kind of almost didn't use?
I'll be honest that I had to be forced to use.
Really?
I'll Be Back, and then I said, well, if we're going to do it, then we're going to do it differently, and we're going to give it to Linda, and we're going to throw it away. Like, it's not going to be. Yeah.
Is that what that action is? It's not literally throwing it away?
It is.
I'll be back.
Yeah, I'll be back. Yeah. And Linda tells the story again. She's like, because she won't watch the movie yet. She doesn't like to look at monitors. She hasn't watched the movie yet. She's going to be my second date to the premiere because she's going to watch it for the first time at the premiere, which scares the fuck out of me. Because Linda Hamilton's disappointment is what nightmares are made of. But
Tim hasn't slept in like 5 days.
it's true, but in a good way. She's the loveliest possible woman that you just don't want to disappoint her, right? But she did say thank you for that a couple weeks ago because her kids had seen it and said, "Oh, Mom, it's great." In a commercial, And one of the commercials, she's like, "Oh, Mom, it's great. It's perfect." So she's like, "Thank you for that." But the way she throws it away, because I said, just throw it away. It's not a moment. We don't want to make it a moment. And then Arnold's the same way, where I thought maybe we were gilding the lily a bit when he says, "I won't be back." But I don't know. It just felt kind of natural to be in the script there. That one was less conscious. The one that was very conscious was the Terminator putting on the glasses in the mirror, which is a big trope that Jim wanted, and that was the way the scene was written. And I just couldn't do it. I shot it, but I couldn't believe that it actually survived without him putting on the glasses, because every time in the screenings, you feel the audience going, yes, 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 yes. No. You feel their disappointment. And the pleaser, as my wife calls me, in me wants to go, I want to give the fans what they want, but I felt like so strongly that was the wrong move, because we're about to spend this whole time to say, I'm not that guy anymore. I'm a different guy. I've changed, and you can't start that journey of redemption by having him be the same guy he was. So I thought that was a very conscious decision, that to say I'm not that man anymore. I'm something new. But I cannot believe that there wasn't more studio pressure to fix it, because you could feel it in the theater.
Well, thank you for your honesty about the "I'll be back" line, because I was nervous about it when I initially thought, I was like, is she going to say this? And it was in the trailer, but then when you watch it with the context of the movie, the throwaway aspect of it was actually the perfect way to go, because again, it's one of those things where you go, you don't want to like make people cringe if she says the line, but it was actually perfect the way you executed. So thank you for being honest about that. I was actually
sure.
That's something I was wondering if you would speak about. That's pretty cool. One of the things that I find interesting are happy accidents in films. And one of the craziest, coolest stories I've ever heard was that sequence in Deadpool when he drives up with the cab, forgets the guns in the back. And that was written, from what I understand, because the guys couldn't afford essentially a gigantic shootout.
Yes.
From what I understand is that's the story. What was a similar, any type of happy accident on this movie where maybe a visual effect was done because to save time or something along those lines, like Deadpool? I know it's a different budget, obviously. But.
Jeez. I don't know. I can't think of any happy accidents, partly because this film had, triple the budget. Deadpool was, and that requires a lot more planning. You're in prep for a lot longer. So I don't know. I can't say that there were any happy accidents. It was kind of very methodical in the plan. And you've heard that old, there's the movie you write, there's the movie you shoot, there's the movie that you make and edit, which is certainly true. But it was more about condensing stuff in editorial, because we just shot too much fucking movie, than it was about having to do anything because we didn't have money. Time we were short of, but.
Cool.
So you're clearly a movie fan, and you're also someone who seems to have his finger on the pulse of what fans think and how they feel about certain things. And I'd imagine that there are a lot of Terminator fans that don't like the past few movies that have
What?
I know, it's surprising.
This comes as a surprise
I know.
to me. Yes.
Whenever you come into a movie like this and you know how people feel about the past few ones, do you have to look at the past few movies and ask yourself, what did they do wrong? Why don't people like those movies?
We looked at all those movies, but it wasn't with that in mind because I knew the answer to that question.
What is the answer?
It didn't have Linda Hamilton in it. It is essentially Sarah's story, and even if they focused on Sarah, it's not Linda Hamilton, and that it's always going to feel odd, and that's nobody's fault. I'm not taking away from anything in those movies. The other reason we really look at those movies is because even though they're not officially part of this timeline, you also don't want to do anything that they did that looks like you're copying it, even though I still did in a couple of places there because there were so many movies and so many good ideas in there. You're inevitably going to solve them in the same way. And, it was the same thing with Jim's approach to this movie. Sometimes it was, you can see that he put a lot of thought into the franchise, these characters, and the situation. And in many ways, he had already solved these problems the best way they could be solved. And so to do it a different way, like Legion's origin being, very similar to Skynet's, well, in Jim's mind, that's the way a rogue artificial intelligence arises.
We're going to hit you with
Full
some...
stop.
Oh, sorry.
That's it.
We're going to hit you with some rapid fire stuff because we don't have a ton of time with you.
Okay.
We're going to get into spoilers shortly. If this is on the spoiler line, let me know. We can be very vague about it. Talk about de-aging Furlong and Hamilton. Can you talk about the effects on that? Because that looked phenomenal. Did they shoot those scenes? Did Furlong shoot that?
All of the characters, Linda, Arnold, and Eddie, all did facial capture. So the CG model of the young version of them is driven by them performing the various expressions and dialogue. There was originally dialogue in that scene. We decided to not have it. So they came in and did a day of facial capture. In Eddie's case, it was just for this. And Linda and Arnold's, it was for this and so much more. And then it's a body double. So it's a person with a little cap on that allows us to track their head. And then the wizards at ILM replaced their heads. And it's not just there. It's all, there's the younger version. But throughout the scene, we use either all CG doubles or digi-double, or head replacements, where we're using stunt actors and we're replacing their heads.
These days when studios are making, these big franchise movies, you're not just making the movie that you're making now, you're also a lot of times setting the groundwork for what's coming. I'm curious, how much of the future do you know that of the storyline, and does that storyline potentially involve Robert Patrick coming back as an older T-1000?
I wouldn't answer that question even if I knew it, but I can tell you that. I mean, look, Jim said it before. We broke 3 films worth of story, and I know where it's going. But we stopped talking about those movies when we started making this movie. So. Whether another filmmaker will pick it up and take it in a different direction than we had originally planned, they certainly can, and they probably will. I doubt it'll be the same exact story that we came up with.
The implication being that it wouldn't be you, like you wouldn't come back to do the next one?
I was grateful just to play in this sandbox once. It's Jim's sandbox, and he can take his toys and do whatever he wants with it. I'm just grateful that I got to do this one. And there's a lot of stories to tell, and I'm old, so I have to look at, how many more movies I can make. The other part. What was the other part of the question? The T-1000. I couldn't tell you about that.
Would you like to, as a fan, would you like to see, like, if it's not you moving forward, do you hope the next guy brings him back?
I can't answer that question. I don't want to set those expectations on him. I feel like we did. The fan service with this Terminator being a combination of those two things. I don't know. I don't think it would work the same way for him. It couldn't work the same way. I mean, because he's kind of set the T-800 up as it ages like a real human. Robert Patrick wouldn't age like a real human. He'd be forever young, which means a digital Robert Patrick the whole time, which is something that I wouldn't suggest a filmmaker do. But, It's up to them.
Arnold saying, "I won't be back." This is a spoiler question. Does that mean he's done? Is that line said with the implication that maybe Arnold is hanging up the character?
I think that if Arnold decides not to do another Terminator movie, yes. If Arnold decides he wants to do another Terminator movie,
politically correct answer.
No. Look, he loves this fucking franchise. He's already going, when are we going to make the next movie, Tim? Because he's not necessarily talking about a Terminator movie, though, because he still wants to do King Conan. But
Can you do that, please?
I think somebody else has got the rights to it. I'm a pretty big Robert E. Howard fan, though. I would do Red Nails if I was going to do a Conan story. Anyway, you can't keep him away from. He just loves doing it. So.
And people love seeing him do it.
Who the fuck know? I know. I've told this story before, but that moment when he walks out of the house and Sarah sees him for the first time, we designed that whole moment to be this huge emotional fucking hand grenade where everybody in the theater went, "Oh my God, the killer of John." Facing the mother, the distraught mother, and we thought it was going to be this big emotional moment. And then Arnold walks out, and the first just test screening, Arnold walks out, and everybody goes, "Yay!" It's Arnold, and they're so glad because the movie was so unreservedly heavy.
It's almost like you were trying to recreate the elevator sequence from T2,
totally.
That horror on Linda's face. And to me, those were like perfect little callbacks. Going back to Jake's question earlier, where like you take the scene in a different direction, but it's clearly as a fan, I'm watching him walk out of that elevator with that shotgun, and she's like slipping back. Remember the sound effects on the floor with like the
yeah. I think that one is better than the one we shot. But honestly, you could look at all those things where you go, "Oh, this is a callback to T1 or T2," and I would say at least 50% of them were unconscious.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're just. It's like somebody would go, "Oh, that's just like T2," and I'd go, "Really?" And then I'd go, "Oh, fuck, you're right." Whether it's because we're in many ways trying to solve the same problems and you come to the same solutions, or I subconsciously am just trying to be Jim Cameron. I can't tell you, or at least some aspects of Jim Cameron.
All right. Well, one more question apiece, and then we'll let you go.
Okay.
20 questions for
Sure.
you.
Yeah. Speaking of wanting to be,
You should go until they come in and drag.
hey, if you're cool with that,
We could talk to you for
Just
2
keep
hours.
doing it until she drags the mic out.
Cool. If you're enjoying this, then we're all for
sure.
it.
That's what I'm here for.
If you, just as a fan, I know that you're a fan of the original Terminator and Terminator 2. Hypothetically, just having fun watching those movies, what is one sequence that you wish that you could have a crack at directing, where you look at that and go, that looks fucking cool?
In Terminator 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite moment in those whole movies is when they're in the pickup truck and Arnold climbs from the back and
Yes.
up onto the front
Yes.
and machine guns the guy. And that's kind of what I was thinking of, where the scene we have where he
Yes,
machine guns
yeah.
the guy in the face.
Yeah.
That was kind of the same idea. And then Jim said, which we could never do these days, but Jim said that stunt guy did it without a wire.
Come on.
Totally. He just did it. Which we would never be allowed to do today.
How did he get by with that then? I mean, that wasn't that
I don't
long
know.
ago.
It's fucking dangerous
Yeah.
shit, man. You'd slip off and you'd be under the treads of the truck.
Oh my God.
Fucking crazy. Yeah.
I love in the opening recalling Linda's television or video moment from the first from T2.
One of the best ideas I ever had.
It's a cool idea because it also plays on T1 redoing that scene too. Obviously, except for it's someone else in the first one, the original. But I find that interesting, and you actually put that on screen in this gigantic IMAX theater, and you still have to match it tonally to what you're doing. What is the idea of, like, when we open with that and then we cut to your cinematography, your own movie? Is there a matching you do there?
Here you go. I should have thought of this. That is the idea. That's the happy accident thing you were looking for earlier, because what we had done originally, we had all these logos up front. We had like a minute and a half of logos, and I'm like, oh my fucking God, we got a fucking minute and a half of fucking logos. We got to make this relevant. And so I said, maybe we should play back snippets of the movie. Maybe we should, to the editor, and Julian's like, oh, that's a good idea, Julian Clark. And then we found that piece.
Yes.
We remembered that piece, and it fit like it was meant to be, like a glove. And
Didn't
then
we
Jim,
look at each
and
other
then-
when it came up?
And Jim had the idea of, maybe you should insert some little flashbacks of the actual footage, which at first I was like, I don't know about that. And then we started fooling with how to do it. And
That's
and it
35
looked
mil,
great.
and you're digital. So that must have been an interesting blending there,
Yeah,
right?
but we're stepping on it so much that you kind of get away with any kind of fuckery that you want to, and we'd purposely make it look like, because that was from a
TV screen.
Yeah, 3/4 inch deck.
Wow.
Shitty. They filmed the actual TV screen, and we got the 35 of them filming the TV screen.
What?
But,
on.
But we didn't get the original. We didn't get them the original footage of them before they put it on the VHS, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, Tim Miller, this has been nothing. We got a couple more minutes? Oh, my God. Okay. So, one of the things that I remember about T2 was going into it and being genuinely surprised that Arnold was the good guy this time. I mean, I remember the studio sort of really kept that under wraps. It was a massive deal.
Brilliant.
And then I remember thinking that the T1000 was going to be the next savior. These days, with the internet and people kind of picking apart every single frame from the trailer, it's harder to surprise. Is it possible? Is it ever going to be possible to do anything like that ever again?
I don't think so.
No. Does that bum you out as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I think you can hide some turns. Like, we're in the post-spoiler part of the equation, so I think we could hide some big turns, like the fact that Danny is John Connor, not Sarah. That was something that we would never put in the trailer. But you can't hide the fact that Arnold is in the movie. I was developing this other movie at Sony, and I was protecting this big turn in the middle with these creatures that go crazy and they're docile before. Anyway, I'm going, no, we got to protect that, blah, blah, blah. And the executive goes, well, it's going to be in the trailer, Tim. These things are like ripping people apart. And I'm like, fuck, you're right. Okay, well, never mind. It's hard to fight the math that people like it better when they have some intimation of the story. Film nerds, and me included, like the surprise of it all, but studies show that
Those damn studies.
I know, but it's hard to you can't say fuck the fans, you can't say fuck the theater goers. I love test screenings because they tell you so much about that, and even if you don't want to hear it, sometimes you fucking gotta listen to it. There's some performances like Natalia, there's an extended cut of the motel scene. Natalia is fucking brilliant, and she gives this, not long, maybe 20 seconds more of talk about her brother and how much he meant to her, and it's beautiful. But audience is like, she's crying a lot. We need to get on. We need to get on with the story here, and you gotta listen.
Some of my, so I grew up watching T2. My favorite cut of the movie is a special edition because you get the smile scene and you get a lot of great elements. It's some of the best trivia ever in movie history comes out of that film. But I love the idea that the security officer, when T1000 comes up, is actually the twin brother of that security officer. But even Linda Hamilton's twin sister at the end of the film. Did Linda Hamilton's twin sister get to come play on this one?
She did not.
Was there a thought about possibly doing that?
No, I don't think they look that much alike anymore. So no, Linda never brought it up.
Oh, that's interesting. They don't look because they look almost identical in the Terminator films. So we are obviously, as you can tell,
Linda wanted to control every aspect of her performance. So to give it up to anybody, like literally the stunt double. Is it physically possible for me to do it? Okay, well then I'm going to do it.
Wow, good for her.
Yeah, she loves it.
We are, as you can tell, pretty geeked out to be here, and we're pretty big fans. And tomorrow we're sitting down with Arnold and Linda, and which we're insanely geeked out about. And the hardest thing I think for both of us, I'm speaking for you too, Kevin, is like kind of getting over our geekdom and our fandom in order to sort of be professionals and go, okay, we gotta do this interview, we gotta do this.
Then ask them some questions that are not the normal questions. Like,
we're trying to.
So what was it like to do?
We never lead with what was it like.
Because you'll have to. You got to knock them out of their comfort zone. Well,
we have what we call geek out dinners where we sit down and we practice our questions on each other and we kind of help each other kind of form questions and stuff.
Before you walked in here,
that's what we were doing. Yeah. As a filmmaker, I know that you're obviously, I can tell by the product of this movie that you're a fan as well. Do you have that moment where you have to sort of get over and go, okay, I got to get past the fandom and I've got to be their director. I have got to be able to tell them what to do. How hard is it to not be a fan anymore?
By the time you get to that moment where you have to direct them, you've gotten to know them quite a lot because they've been there for a few weeks before the camera rolls. Or I've met Arnold, early on, you can kind of get a sense of what kind of person they are. So at that time, I'm so involved in just like doing my fucking job the best I possibly can, that the fanboy, it really doesn't have, there's no room left for him in the process. Every once in a while you have a little moment where you go, holy fuck, it's Linda Hamilton.
Go full Chris Farley.
Yeah.
Remember that time?
Holy fuck, yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. But usually I'm just involved in the, 800 questions that are being asked, or, what do we got to do? What's the next setup, or that sort of a thing. And they're both so normal, regular people that,
You're still directing Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton. It's crazy to me. It's amazing.
He does.
Yeah.
And Arnold will fuck with you. It's definitely true. Like the no smoking on set. Arnold's like, fuck you. Fuck you. Yeah.
Going off, this is going to be the final question, and this is still kind of in the spoiler territory. Going off his question earlier about fan service, my favorite scene in T2, besides the smile scene which Jim Cameron cut out of the movie, was the thumbs up. And to me, it's the first time I ever cried in a film. It was like it hits me harder than I could ever imagine, just the way he does it. Jake and I were sitting in the theater last night watching your film, and there was a moment where that could have potentially happened. And Jake and I were like, I'm glad he didn't go thumbs up there, because I feel like that would have been too on the nose. Was there a version of that scene where he went like that?
Never. And it would never happen in a Tim Miller movie.
Yes.
But I can only say that was not my favorite part of the movie. And the fact that it is yours is a symptom of your age. I think that you saw it, because when I saw T2, I was 27, right? But one of the first things I asked Linda is, how do you feel about the thumbs up or moment? And she's like, no. And I went, okay, we're going to be fine. Because
But I love that scene.
I know.
And we were at that age when it came out?
It is. And well, Jim loves that scene. Many people love that scene. For me, it's iconic, I know, but maybe a little too sentimental for.
Damn, I love that
I know,
scene.
I know, and I don't want you to not love it.
You ruined my childhood, Tim.
I want you to love it the way you can only love those moments in your life when you feel that the world is a good place. And
Do we know if it
only
was
good
Arnold's
things will
thumb
happen.
for real? I want to ask them that tomorrow. Do you know if it's actually Arnold's thumb?
I do not know that question.
That's my opening question tomorrow.
You should. Yeah, you should. Is that really your thumb?
I want to know if it's his
I can
thumb.
tell you that almost every actor except Linda Hamilton and Arnold, actually, for that matter, comes to set and immediately looks around like, who in the crew has hands that look like mine? Because then they don't have to be in that shot, like it's opening a doorknob or whatever.
probably
They
Jim Cameron's
can go
hand.
back to their trap.
It was his hands drawing the Kate Winslet photo in Titanic, right? Those are Jim Cameron's hands.
What if it's Jim Cameron's thumb?
I would bet you that it's not, but I would also bet you that Arnold will never admit that it's not. But who knows? Let's say that it is. Wouldn't you feel better if it was?
I've been going over all my questions, and that's the one I was like, I've always wanted to know that. But all right, well, thank you, Tim. This has
welcome.
been an honor. Thank you for someone who's 8 years old and saw Terminator 2 for the first time to sit in the theater last night and actually get an experience. That was like the way I felt when I was 8 years old. It was just a pleasure. So,
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Why do you care what happens to her?
Because I was her.
I can see you're very upset.
I'll be back.